All right. So for today, we're going to be going over some tips for you to set up a pre-save campaign, how you can set up a pre-save campaign for worldwide territories, both optimizing that for productivity on the platform as well as doing it so if you have like a splits rights situation, I'll show you a shortcut for that. Setting up some action pages to fill in the content calendar that we did in the previous lessons, and then some alternative concepts just to help push the release in terms of content. Um, so we'll get started today. This example has been sent out in recap emails, which we will send out for this one on Friday. If you don't have it, you can follow along. It's pretty easy. So just to sort of recap, we've set up our ad platforms that we're going to target. We have our pre-release checklist. We also have the content listed for our release, the social links that we've already set up, the streaming services that are sort of targeted ones for this campaign. And we've also got our somewhat limited content calendar that we'll fill in a bit more today. So let's get started. So a pre-save on our platform, let me go to the right folder, is just a link that helps you get pre-saves, pre-ads on Spotify, Apple Music, Tidal, or Deezer. Those are the 4 DSPs that we currently offer. And to do that, you would just click into an artist folder like this one that I have set up for our example artist share. You would just click on SmartLinks pre-saves. For anybody that knows how to do this, just sort of hold it for 1 second. Click on pre-release pre-save. So we're actually going to be rolling out a new feature called Global Local Release. This hasn't actually been shown before. It's available for our Tier 1 Pro Marketer users, so if anybody is watching this and they want access to this, just let me know. And how this works is generally you have a global release time, which means that it will convert globally at the time that you specify here. For local release, when you set a time, it'll actually convert at that time in every time zone. So let's say that you have a release coming out and in Australia, which is significantly ahead of the US, which is where I'm based, it will come out at 12 a.m. midnight in Australia's time zone. In the US, it would still show as a pre-save if somebody's accessing that link. So that's great. Here we'll set the release date. I like to do 12 a.m. Let's do it for the 27th. Now, your scan source, you actually don't have to add as soon as you create a pre-save. You just have to add it before the link converts. Some people get sort of confused as to how a pre-save or a pre-ad works on most of these platforms. What it does is it sort of just saves that action that a fan saves in their DSP of choice. And then once the release day comes, it'll scan then and look for the identifying UPC, ISRC, or whatever else you've put in as the identifier. So yeah, just make sure that you put that in before the release day, but that's sort of how it works. For this example, I just want to walk through some best practices really quickly. So for a pre-save, most of these are going to be empty, and a lot of people ask me why only these 4 show up right now. That's because those are the only platforms that currently support a pre-save. We do have, or I should say, I have seen a workaround for YouTube, which I will go over next week possibly. It's a little bit complicated, as is everything with YouTube. And for these to show up, they're just going to be the 4 that show up unless you enter in a link in any of these ones. So just a heads up for anybody that's asking that. We did recently switch our email subscribe option. It used to be a separate page over here, but now it's just a store that you have to add. So I would suggest adding that to any links that you have. I will go over in a second sort of how to manage that process. But for all of these, you want to make sure that you're including a post pre-save destination, which is where the fans will be directed after they pre-save the track for any of these 4 DSPs. I'm just going to put in her website, but it can be any link on the internet. So it could be an unlisted YouTube video that you only want fans to see you have pre-saved. It could really be anything. I do suggest that it's something that's interesting, not just going to the homepage of a website. Most artists will have like merch packages or something like that around a release or something like a live stream nowadays. So just making sure all that's filled in. For these, we also have an auto follow function just for Spotify, which means that when fans pre-save a track for just Spotify, or they click this button right here, what they'll get is a pop-up that appears that will allow them to follow the artist, a playlist, or a release. For this, I always, especially during a pre-save campaign, I always like to include a complete discography playlist, which I already have for this artist from Spotify right here. So we'll put that in. So now when fans get that pop-up, they'll be prompted to follow the artist's profile page on Spotify, and they'll also get follow the playlist on her best hits, which there are many. Just making sure all this is filled in. So for the next page, you'll be prompted with these boxes right here to fill in. For these, I always like to use a custom subdomain. Those can be set up, I've walked through that in the previous videos. Those can be set up on the artist folder level. I like to customize these URLs, so we'll do greatest hits. Make sure that it's something that's like unique to the artist or the release. I always like to include the artist name in this if that's not the subdomain that you're using as well, so that's a tip. Here we have the territory settings, which is what we're going to walk through next. We can import a link from Spotify if you have it. So if you do have that, it can automatically pull it in. I like to be lazy and do that. If you also have the option of using a YouTube video, that is the option that I like to suggest to people if they have a lot of video content, which I can show you where to add that. Customizing this text. She has many greatest hit albums. And always make sure that you have the date that the release is going to be out is available, let's say 11/27. And I do like to put emojis in there. It does support emojis, so just a heads up. So post-release description is what will show up after the link converts on release day. What that means is you can update this text to say available now, and it won't show up until the link is released. It's awesome. You only have to do it once when you're setting up the pre-save. Highly suggest doing it now. The preview source, you can select a Spotify preview link if you have that. You can also do Apple Music, Amazon Deezer, a YouTube video, a SoundCloud link, or an MP3 file. For the MP3s, if you don't have a website to host it on where you can get that MP3 extension, I would suggest Dropbox. For the store orders, like I said, the only ones that are going to show up are going to be the pre-save pre-add. So just keep that in mind when you want to look at the store order. For this, I would suggest moving the email subscribe to the top. All right, looks good to me. And then these are some ones that you can do around, like if you have press and you just want them to go to like a free DSP, you could set the preview source to SoundCloud and then have people go there with the conditional routing rules. You could also send visitors who have already pre-saved a track from you before to go to their preferred service. Enable timeout redirection, you can use after the link converts. Before the link converts, don't use that. It's going to redirect nowhere because your release is not up on the DSP. Social icons, always make sure those are turned on. Social cards, you can edit these if you want to. I mean, she looks perfect, so we don't need to. One more note on this is that you can also add post-release description copies. So like we showed you on the other page, this says available 11/27. If you put available now, if you shared this link out after it's converted, it'll say that it's out now. Here we have pixels. So make sure you've got your Facebook pixel in, your Google pixel in, Google Tag Manager if you're going to be doing any TikTok ads. The custom retargeting event data will automatically fill in when the release converts on release day. It'll scan it and pull in the metadata. If you have any affiliate links, if you're a label, you can use that. Google Analytics, and we're good here. So once you get the pre-save link, I always like to put it in the marketing plan. So I'm going to grab that as our pre-save link. I'll just put actually release link because it'll be the same thing before and after the release. And we will go into the split territories or the territory management now. So going back to the artist folder, if you click on the little gear icon like I just did, you'll be taken here. This is all of her social, this is all of the names, all that kind of stuff. This isn't really relevant to this. This, however, is. So for our store territories, I want to explain one thing because a lot of people get confused when they look at the little territories that show up underneath the release. Store territories, those aren't really useful unless you have a specific territory carve-out promotions. The one that you want to pay attention to is localization. So this is the one where if you go back to the link settings page, you see the little default with the globe icon. So here we're going to add some countries so I can show you what this looks like. This will allow you to save a store default list for that territory specifically. So I'm going to put Deezer ahead of Spotify in France. We're going to make sure that we take off any like territory ones right now. So we will take off ones that are not available in France or ones that just aren't popular there. I think that is it. Also going to move up the email subscribe since that's a store to the very top. So it will go email subscribe, Deezer, Spotify, Apple Music, iTunes, etc. Now you can put in as many as you want here. I would say if you have specific needs for your artist or you have specific territories where you know that you're trying to target, specifically around any Asian companies or Middle Eastern ones where they have different streaming services that are more popular, even Africa, which is not a country, is a continent with many countries on it, but arguably has different DSPs. All of these places do. I would suggest carving out the default stores here and then just creating the countries in this spot. So we can create one in Africa as well. We'll do South Africa. And what you want to do is just make sure that the DSPs that you're targeting are available in that country. Sometimes people don't, and they wonder why when they run ads, it will like not be available there. That is one thing. So always make sure that you check where the DSPs are available. Just because Spotify and Apple Music are ubiquitous in the US does not mean that they are internationally. Okay, so if we're going to do South Africa, we're going to remove these. Pandora's only in the US, so we will remove that. I'll remove iTunes because I don't see myself purchasing anything. All right. We'll move Boomplay up. There is another one that I want to add. It's in here. It is not. All right, we'll leave this for right now. This will be a good enough example. Okay. So we'll click save. Now we'll have those two countries available for those two territories, and I'll show you what to do on the pre-save link right now. So if you go back to our pre-save, you'll see here that we will have the option to toggle that on for the artist on the link settings page. So this is where this will show up. So these are the two countries that we added. So you would have to toggle these on. I suggest doing this just because from a time standpoint, you're going to save a bunch of time if you just create these in advance when you're creating the artist folder or going back whenever you enter like pixels or anything like that in. Just click save. And then when you scroll over to France right here, or you can go to the drop down. I like to scroll, it has a dramatic effect. And for this, you're able to sort of see the difference in the display. anything that you set for this territory won't be viewable outside of anybody who has like an IP address from France. The same with South Africa. Because Boomplay does not have a pre-save, that's why it's not showing up. But once this is released, it will show Boomplay as the top. And anything that you edit on these pages won't be duplicated for the other territories. The only people who get to see these are people who are visiting from a French IP address and then anybody from a South African IP address. So I do get a question a lot of times, and how do you manage a split rights territory setup? So for that, what I suggest doing is very, very simple, and this will take 2 seconds to cover. Every pre-save only supports one ISRC. So what you want to do is you want to create a pre-save for each release, for each country who has the rights to it, with the ISRC associated with it. A lot of the times, if you have a different distributor in the rest of the world versus just in the US, you'll get two ISRCs for the same release. So what you do is you create a pre-save for rest of world, you create a pre-save for the US, and then you take those and you create a short link that's geo-targeted. This was actually one of the things that I wanted to have immediately when we launched our short link product, and we got a lot of feedback from users about wanting to have geo-targeted links. So for this, what you'll do is you'll have the string right here. You can use custom subdomains. What I would do is I would put shares greatest, actually, because we already have her name in the thing, we'll do greatest hits. And then what you would do is I would carve out the US or whatever territory you need to here. Let's do this. So I would put the link that I already created, and then for just the US, and then for the rest of the world, I would just make sure that the acronym that I used when I created my link said the same thing, but ROW. It could be hard sometimes to keep track of a lot of links if you're creating them. So this way, make sure you edit this. Because I'm in the US, I'll only see the link that I created. I won't get the error message for this. Make sure that you have the pixels installed, which you can do. You can turn on social cards if you want and edit those. But what you would do is you would just click save. And then the magic of this is that a short link goes directly to the destination that you put in when you shorten the URL. So if you just click get link and you go to it, you'll see it goes directly to the landing page. And this is the one for the US. So that is the workaround for multiple territories. It's pretty simple. It's a lot more simple than the way that we used to do it. So back to our lesson plan. So we have our pre-save link now right here. What I want to do is create some activity channels for this. So just in case anybody doesn't know what those are a feature that we have on the platform for any link that are right here. So you can actually use activities for keeping track of traffic. The reason why I like to make my own is because I'm stubborn and I'm somewhat of a perfectionist, and I like to track everything from pre-release to post-release. You don't have to be as detail-oriented. We do offer links that are automatically generated once you have created it, that are right here at the Get Link button. These are automatically created for you, so you can use these. Organic channels just mean you're sharing it on your socials. Paid channels mean anywhere that you're going to run ads. And then direct links are for if you want to have the user go directly to a DSP. We don't want people to go to a DSP when it's a pre-save because, again, there won't be anything there for them to use that for. Let me take a shot of this. And so for this purpose, we're going to create some channels for this release. So you can already see here that I can see where I was. So what channels means is like you copied the link and you pasted it in your browser. For activities, it's a little bit different. And I'll put this into the chat so people can take a look at it. follow along if you can. And what this is you're actually able to populate this with whatever you want. So what I suggest doing is, and this is the structure, I'm sorry, this is the structure for folks. So this is your link, and then you would add an exclamation point with the acronym if you want to use at the end. I like to do this for anywhere that I'm going to run paid, since I know that we're going to run ads on all of these DSPs right here. What I want to do is create ones for each of these, as well as just like a general one for when I say, like when I share it on my socials. So I'm going to carve out the social platforms here that we'll be sharing on for this. And let me do this. So we'll do Facebook. We'll do all the usual suspects: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, which is what one that Share loves. YouTube for the descriptions and any videos or the About Me section. We'll also do, I would put it in TikTok. We're actually going to put it in a bio link, but for right now, we're going to create one for TikTok because we are going to run ads. Website, and then email list, or email newsletter, we'll call it. So we'll just take this, which is our link. Let me link this for us. And what we'll do is we'll put it here for Facebook, and then we'll just do Facebook. Now what this will do is once you post this on Facebook, you'll be able to see that the traffic is coming from this Facebook post. And the reason why you want to do that, or the reason I like to do that, I should say, is because I like to track the organic clicks that I'm getting for a release. And I just like to make sure that any spends that I'm doing, particularly with the activities, especially with all of these, anything that I'm doing, I'm getting a better ROI, and I'm tracking the actual engagement just to make sure that I'm setting benchmarks for everything and that it's happening. So we'll finish this up. Now this will track the link when it's embedded in a newsletter, so don't worry about that. I'll just put email here. So you can see here we have everything linked, and we will link these up now. So once you're filling in your marketing plan with the content calendar and everything, you're able to put these links in there as what you would suggest doing, or as what you would suggest linking to for every release. So we'll put this in here. And I like to be very, there we go. Okay, so when I did posts before, now that we have our links, there you go. You can just put these in where we have these little brackets, and you'll see there. So anytime you have a single coming out for this release, I would suggest creating that same process for just the single and putting in your marketing plan. But that's one thing that you can do for the pre-save, sort of like the setup for it. And then this way you don't have to worry about your clicks or your advertising plans and keeping track of those, because those will all show up in the same place. That will all populate right here. And we are going to move on to action pages. So action pages are sort of our version of a contest page, which is how most folks view the product. And that is a correct way, but it's also sort of a way for you to actually build out your audience and activate them before the release comes out. So in our original plan that we had, if you go back for a second, in our original plan that we had said that we want to, in our calendar, have an action page to save the playlist that we make. So the playlist that we made, hypothetically in our imaginations, is a greatest hits playlist. That's something that I like to use a lot for releases, is especially for like the Spotify autofollow or Apple Music, is making sure that people are pre-saving the track, but also that they're saving my artist's greatest hits and their most popular hits on the DSP for their release. The reason why I like to push that is because a save to me as a marketer means more than discovery. For me, I would like to, when I look at my Spotify for artists, I would like to have most of my artists' plays coming from people that have saved the songs to their library rather than from editorial support. Generally for that, I like to recommend like a 70-30, 60-40, where 70% are listening to it from their library, 30% are listening to it from editorial. Because the main action that's going to show that people love your artist's song is not necessarily the plays that you get, but the saves, because that means people want to listen to it more than once. So that is a tip for you. So in our example, we have these two greatest hits playlists for share. Now we're going to go to the action pages. And we're going to make an action page where people will save those playlists to their library. Now for action pages, I don't suggest using a photo as a tip for you guys for the artwork. I would suggest using a video. And it could be a personalized video, a music video, anything that you want it to be. But that's what I would say you should do. So for Spotify, we'll do follow artist. And here we will put in our follow for Spotify. Now you can actually edit this to be anything that you would like. So for the button text, you can have that custom. For the action success message, I always like to personalize this because it just makes it look a little bit more comprehensive, and it makes it a little bit more personal. And make it fun, so it's not just like something where it's boring and fans are reading it. They did just save your artist track after all. So I'm gonna say thank you, honey, for saving my greatest hits playlist. Man, I am old and this music is banging. Love share. Actually, we'll just leave it. The music is banging. Include a post destination URL or unlock. I would put in her website. Again, this could be anything. For anybody that has a release plan and their artist is going to be doing a live stream, I would suggest putting in a post action destination URL. That could be a live stream event. That could be really anything. If you're going to set up a live stream event, I would suggest setting it up as an event on like Bandsintown, Facebook, Songkick, and all the rest of the places where you would list tour dates. And then putting that in here, whichever of those is your poison. And just make sure that you have follow an artist. This is automatically pulled in from the artist folder where you fill in the socials. So if you have that filled in, you don't have to go do it again. Again, pointing to the fact that if you do it once, you don't have to do it more than that. Always make sure collect fan email addresses is added. So we have Spotify. We will add Apple Music now. It's a little different because Apple is fancy like that. And we will grab the Apple playlist. Again, customize everything. Thank you for saving my playlist. All right, include a post destination unlock. All right. You'll see that that's actually a little bit different from Spotify. So just in case anybody has any questions, you'll see that it doesn't have like the auto follow here. It'll just have the post destination unlock. And these are our buttons. So for this, I want to use a video. So let me grab one. Classic. So we will put that in. And that would go right here. Now, it could be a contest. It can be anything you want. I would suggest just making it a contest. You know, it could be anything from like a merch item to getting exclusive access to like a ticketed live stream. If you guys are going to do one on release day or a listening party, which most folks are doing with the current pandemic, I would suggest doing that. So for the description, we'll say, I'm releasing my greatest hits. Again, she's released greatest hits like 3 times. No, for real this time. Let me autocorrect that. Okay, perfect. Looks great. Again, we can go to the social icons. I always turn those on. Social cards, you can edit those if you want. Advanced settings, it's sort of the same thing as on the pre-save page, so we don't need to go over it again. The one thing I will note is if you do have any sort of territory restrictions or anything like that for privacy policies or terms of service, you can put those in here. And one other thing that I do want to point out is that you can actually run contests with the same territory set up. So if you want to have something different in France or South Africa or the US, you can. Like if you just want to do subscribe to YouTube in France, but you don't want to do that for the rest of the world, you can do that here. So did want to note that. So now we have our action page. Now, when fans are adding those playlists to their libraries, that's just going to help you more on release day, especially with Spotify and the algorithm playlists like Release Radar or anything like that. So what I like to do in my marketing plans is I always like to put it in like a week before or after a new single will come out. So for me, I'll put it here. As you can see, when we were originally planning this out, I put this 7 days ahead of like the music video for the single. For this, we'll want to do the same thing for these. So we've got our action pages set up now. And some other things that I wanted to mention just for this video in terms of content and things like that for email newsletters. I don't know what a lot of folks use. I know that they use like MailChimp or, depending on who you are, Constant Contact or the size of your list or Community or anything like that. So there's 2 things that I wanted to mention that you can actually do on the platform that aren't necessarily straightforward use cases, but ones that I've done before. So one is actually you can use the platform as your email capture for your artists. So what you would do is you'd click on the standard landing page. You would remove everything. This is going to take a second because there's a lot. Right. And you would essentially just set this up as an embeddable widget that you can put on a website. So for that, what you would do is you would have this, you would go to link settings. This can really be any link. You don't have to do anything with this. For this part, I would just use any like default artwork because you're going to be embedding this on the artist's site. So we'll just scan this, but again, like I would just use like some type of image of the artist or something like that. I would remove this so that it said like share email newsletter sign up. And then sign up. How do you spell that? Sign up for my email newsletter. I make great margaritas and find out my recipe. So from this, I would then make sure that nothing else is selected. You don't need to turn on social cards or the icons for this. I would include your pixels if you have those. Oh, put this. Let's put in a scan source. We're going to have to delete the stores again. This isn't relevant for anything, so don't worry about it. Once it's finished scanning, it will. You don't have to do it again. There just has to be something in that link. So it could really be anything. It could be like, I don't know, their last single or their last album or something. Like I said, it's a hack. It's not necessarily straightforward. So you'll see here, we have to re-edit that. That was my bad. Shows email list. Right. Now we'll click save. We'll just keep an empty store in there. anyways, what you'll do is you'll end up going back here and you'll take that link, click get link, and then just make sure that all of this is correct. And what you'll do is you'll click on this part right here and you'll embed it. So that's a short link, so we can't embed that, but you can embed the smart link or pre-save, and you'll just get this embed code and put it into your website. It'll work anywhere where you have like the ability to put in HTML or anything like that. And we do offer different sizes, so that is something that I would suggest. And that was one. Another one is your bio link. So we'll go over this next week for some more release oriented stuff. But I would suggest once you have your pre-save that you add it to this list of links and put it at the very top. And this will live obviously in your Instagram bio link or your TikTok. So what you'll do is you'll just click on link, smart link, and you'll just pull in the pre-save and it'll show up right here. Now, if you want to get fancy, I would suggest changing the colors so that it sticks out to be something like bright and fun, because that's just the artist that I have in this scenario. So we'll do black text with a fun color. Okay. And then that way, when fans click on Instagram or TikTok, they'll be taken here. So for that, we'll click on save. And you're all set. So if anybody goes to your artist bio link, it will look like this. And they'll click on this and we'll be taken to the right place. All right, so we've got that. Now, for this, let's put in our bio link as another one, because no matter what you use, you're going to want to have something in your artist TikTok or Instagram bios. Now, one thing that I always like to tell people is to make custom content. And for me personally, I like to do content in Photoshop. You can use like Sketch, Figma, anything like that to create images. You can also use like Microsoft Paint if you want to be really fancy. But for anything like that, I always like to make sure that I'm like putting together like the right content. Like as you can see here, we have a bunch of different content that we're going to need. So one thing that I did want to walk you guys through is sort of how to make a pre-save image. Let me Google image share. We can do this really fast. There are so many. So you'll obviously have like press shots or something like that for your artists that you're gonna have available. And we will open this up. So one thing that I like to tell people is if you're gonna make images for your artists' releases and you're gonna share them on socials, make sure that there's a clear call to action on the image, not just like the copy and the text and that sort of thing. And also if you're gonna make different single artworks, or if you're gonna do like anything for the singles that's going to be different, especially if you're going to use some type of like waterfall effect for the pre-save or pre-add strategy with your singles, then you're going to want to make sure that all of your creative is like clear and concise. The rule of like 20% for advertising we can go over next week, but for this we do want to make sure that we have let me grab our image. Let's go for it. There we go. So I always like to say start with like a simple image and you can add different things to it. If you have somebody that you're working with that's creative, if you're not technical, it's not really that hard to like use some type of like image manipulation software. But what I do like to say to people is if you have an album image that you're using, don't necessarily just use that for the pre-save. Use something where you can put in text so it's not like everything on the image. For me, I like to use Photoshop because it's just super easy to use, but also it's just like very it's just very what am I trying to say, optimized for creating multiple images. So for me, I always like to say pre-save at the very, very bottom of an image, especially with like TikTok or something like that, or if you're running ads, because remember, we're gonna be running ads for this release. And if you make your own creative, you're going to be much better off. So I would say put it in like the lower half. And we'll move the copy up so that it is level. Now for any multiple single artwork that you have, I would suggest using like a different color variation or even a different photo, just to make sure that you're keeping everything consistent with whatever creative that you have. But the purpose of this is to show you sort of what I would suggest for any type of advertising creative. It's really easy to do this. It's really not that complicated. So I would do something like this. Unless you're running it from your artist account, where I would say like pre-save my new album, something like that that's very clear and concise and will grab attention, especially in like a news feed. If you're doing Instagram stories or Facebook stories or anything like that, I don't suggest images. I suggest using video. And if you're going to do video and you don't have any clips or anything like that, then I would suggest hiring somebody, doing something funny like Fiverr. You can have multiple things that you can do. But that's sort of what, like a little thing that I wanted to mention, because a lot of people ask me like what my suggestions are for creative for advertising, but I like to keep it super clean and simple. Also, if you have any funny images of your artist, that's always key. So I think that was everything that I sort of wanted to cover.